Man, can I not say enough how much I love this movie. For those who've been following my channel for a while, first of all, you would probably notice that I'm not wearing the black shirt right now because I want to try something out different for Christmas time. But you would also know that I'm a big fan of the movie Tolkien. Best way I can explain this movie in my mind is this is a Christmas version of the movie Tolkien. I only just got to see it for the first time, and it's probably one of my favorite Christmas movies now. But because I have to be fair on this movie, I'm gonna have to try to be nitpicky and try to pull apart anything I can to say, yeah, this is the problems with this movie. Because there are problems in this movie. And I'm gonna dive into those and then dive into what I like about this movie. And hopefully by the end of this video, you know whether you want to watch this movie or not. So let's jump in. So starting out with the bad stuff, the quality of the audio was good, but then they had this sound effect when people shut the door, when people walked every once in a while and stuff like that. That best way to explain it would be it kind of sounded like fart noises. So it might literally just be the audio in my earbuds, but for some reason it sounded like when people every once in a while there's a couple points when people shut the door and there was this fart noise afterwards. When people walked across the screen and there was this fart noise. It was like, it always distracted me from the movie. And honestly, I'm gonna have to rewatch the movie maybe without my earbuds and just see if it comes up then. But so this might just be something that I ran into that no one else would run into, but I just wanted to bring it up because I'm like, if that's actually a part of the thing, why is that sound effect in those scenes? I don't know. I might be going insane right now, and it's not there one bit, but in my mind, it was there, and I'm very much confused. Next aspect that was kind of a nitpick was, while I enjoyed the opening scene, you could have cut that scene out of the movie, and it would have still been the same. There was the next scenes after that helped set up what that first scene was showing anyways, so it kind of was just, this is Charles Dickens in America. This is his reaction to the narrative. Okay, it was there, it kind of set up like, I kind of felt like an outsider getting all this praise, but in the same way, it wasn't necessary because then the other scenes were showing him in London and how he reacted to the people in London. So you could have cut that scene out and it would have been perfectly fine. Next one is, this is one I'm most like iffy about, is in a way I can say that I really enjoyed the setups they did for where he came up with the story for Oliver Twist. But in the same way, I feel like if you changed a little bit of stuff in the movie, it wouldn't have been necessary to have that stuff in there. In the same way, again, I really liked it, but I'm trying to, when writing this review, at first I was writing just a bunch of positive things that I liked about it, but then I thought like I should probably bring up some stuff that actually were not as just positive, because this movie's not perfect. So I'm like, yeah, honestly, they could have easily have, the whole subplot was almost its own story unto itself that you could have dived into. To be honest, they would set up this whole thing that Charles Dickens is like Scrooge because of this background of his, but in the same way, I felt like it didn't come across well with that in a way. In some ways it did, but I don't know. I felt like it was good, but unnecessary. You could find a way to get around that. I liked it, but I'm just saying you could find a way to get around it and still have the same story. So it wasn't necessary in it. But now that I've talked about the few things I did not fully agree with in this movie, let's talk about the things I really liked about this movie. Because there's a bunch of that stuff. The casting in this movie is incredible. They casted everyone pretty well. Now, I will admit that I did look up right before recording this how old Charles Dickens was when he wrote A Christmas Carol, and he was in his later 50s, so this doesn't line up with, he doesn't look anything like what Charles Dickens would have looked like at that age. But in the same way, the actor they got played him pretty well, so I don't care. Again, I haven't done a bunch of research on the life of Charles Dickens, so I don't know everything about him, and what I know about him, it didn't totally go against him, so I didn't have a problem with that. But if someone who's a big fan of his works and all has like done a bunch of research on his life, they might have problems with the way it portrays him as a younger man when he's supposed to be in his, like, I think 58 or something when he wrote this, when he wrote A Christmas Carol. So he does not look like he's in his 50s, especially his later 50s. In this movie, he looks like he's in his 30s. So yeah, you take that where you may, but in the most part, that was kind of a nitpick. But for the most part, the casting, I liked it. I liked the casting. I thought his father was casted well. His wife was casted well. I thought he was casted well, even if there's that issue there. I thought he was casted well. Most of all, I thought that Scrooge was casted well. The person they got to play him was Christopher Plummer. Christopher Plummer, for those who have followed this channel for a while, I've talked about Christopher Plummer a little bit before when talking about Knives Out. I like the movie Knives Out. He plays the person who gets murdered in that movie. The big thing I know him from is the movie The Sound of Music, as most people do. But he's like in a bunch of movies. Christopher Plummer is an awesome actor, and he does such a great job in this movie playing Scrooge. He plays a perfect Scrooge, and I would love to see a version of A Christmas Carol with him. Now, he's dead now, so you can't, but same fact of the matter is, he was a good Scrooge. Story and plot are really good. It follows the story of Charles Dickens as he invents the story of A Christmas Carol. And you see him as he deals with all these really rude rich people, and he decides to make a book that's criticizing this way of life, where it's all about, I'm great, all the poor people are like, terrible. So he's like, growing up poor, working in a factory 12 hours a day when he was a kid. While he's now has money and he's in this lifestyle, he's not fitting in properly because in his mind, the homeless, the poor people, they are not lesser humans. They're just as much of humans as the rich are. And the rich need to learn to, accept that and become nicer people. One thing that I saw in a review was someone was talking about how he had read the book, The Man Who Invented Christmas, and he was saying all this movie was terrible because it wasn't following the book exactly and stuff like that. And I didn't watch the review actually all the way through, because then I found a review that was, in my mind, a little bit better to understand. But anyways, the point is, he tried to make the argument that it doesn't really explain in this movie that how the title works. Why is it The Man Who Invented Christmas? And in my mind, it does explain it pretty well. It does. It shows when he brings up this idea of, I want to make a story about Christmas. The people were like, Christmas is such an average holiday. Why are you picking Christmas? And in some people's minds, they're like, the whole argument that guy tried to say when brought up the whole thing, he's like, yeah, but most people are not smart enough to understand that Christmas back then wasn't the same as Christmas now. I'm like, I feel like most people are smart enough to realize, hey, maybe times change, and in the 1800s, they might have had a different Christmas than what we have nowadays. So yes, if he was the one who said, hey, and it's true, he took this holiday that people had basically forgotten about. People had not paid attention to him that much, and he said, this is the story about it, and it brought everyone back to more life with it, that, oh yes, I like Christmas. And I feel like it's really weird that that guy was saying that we're not smart enough to realize that maybe Christmas was different back then. I'm like, I just feel like people are smart enough to realize that maybe times change, and that back in the 1800s, there could have been a less of a commercial of Christmas. So, I don't know. But the point is, yes, it makes sense why it says the man who invented Christmas, because he invented what now is Christmas. He invented the return to this holiday. We've already talked about it somewhat, but the message of this movie is that we need to treat all humans the same. The whole message is basically the message of Christmas Carol. How he wrote A Christmas Carol was he was talking about and working through this message, and there's one of the big lessons that he learned in this was the lesson of forgiveness, and also he had to learn that anyone can redeem themselves. Anyone can, because the whole part of this movie going into the third act was he was like, I don't know how I'm going to save Tiny Tim, because I don't feel like Scrooge will be able to, change it all. As he's like going into the third act, he's like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And then he's discovering that anyone can change, even Scrooge. He built up this terrible, mean guy, but he realized that through the things he was showing, even Scrooge can change into being a good person. Last thing I'm gonna mention is the cinematography. This movie is beautiful. It looks beautiful. I will admit that they had this whole like moment where Scrooge is like, all the fog in London. And I'm like, London looks beautiful. There's barely any fog, so what? So I will say that's a nitpick almost, is that it looks beautiful, but then they have moments where they're saying it's not beautiful. So I don't know. Technically that could be considered a disadvantage, is how beautiful it looks, but also saying that it doesn't look that beautiful. So I don't know. But for the most part, this is a pleasing movie to watch visually. And the story is awesome. Message is great. The acting is incredible. All the casting, I enjoy. I will, again, technically they got an actor who was way too young to play Charles Dickens. But for the most part, I didn't really care. I thought it was a well put together movie. Again, it's like the movie Talking, but if it was a Christmas movie. It got me hyped for Christmas again. This is a movie I'm going to watch again sometime because I loved it. It was an awesome Christmas movie, and as a person who wants to strive to be a writer, I absolutely love the whole thing with going through with talking a lot about writer's block and how he invented these stories and stuff like that. I thought it was really good. Tell me your thoughts. Did you watch this movie? Do you like it? I really enjoyed it. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts about it, because you guys might come in and say, like, oh, I hated this aspect and this aspect and this aspect. And I'm like, I didn't think about that. So I really want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. If you guys haven't yet, again, please subscribe. This has been the Movie Net Reviewer, Peter Wary, signing off.